Wouldn't it be great if our discernment was so keen and so sharp and so on point that the enemy would never be able to get anything over on us? Wouldn't that be great? That if every teaching that we heard, we'd be able to go, that doesn't line up biblically. That doesn't sound like the voice of God. That doesn't seem to resonate with the Spirit of God. Wouldn't it be great if that was the case? Wouldn't it be wonderful if the discernment was so sharp and so keen that when we were looking at something that we would know immediately that we needed to turn our gaze away from that thing because inevitably that thing was going to cause us to fall into sin? You know, sometimes it's easier said than done. And we can look at people who've made mistakes, and we can look at people who maybe struggle with addictions, whether they're food addictions, alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever it is, and we can judge them for continually falling back into the same pattern of things. But I want to say this, I don't think that any of us are really all that different if we're honest with ourselves, because the reality is inside of our being, we have this desire to know something. And once we've known evil, and we just talked about that, once we've known evil, it's really difficult for us to not desire that same evil, especially if it was pleasurable. And isn't that the point of evil and wickedness? You know, and the thing about evil is that it's never satisfied. That's what the Bible says. It's never satisfied. The enemy is never satisfied. And if you talk about anything, we're going to look today, whether it's gossip or, like I said, an addiction of any kind, there's a reason people get pulled into it. So what I want to take just a second for today is I want to take a look at Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. And it says, and when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, she looked, and she kept on looking. And then she probably began to compare as she looked at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then she looked at the tree of life, and she looked at the other trees in the garden, and she says, you know, it's a tree. It's got green leaves. It's got whatever color fruit on it, and it looks pretty delicious. It doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it. I don't see any thorns or worms or anything like that that's going to come out and attach itself to me. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be able to maybe just partake once, you know. And there's this thing that we start to do in our being. It's like, well, it's okay for me to indulge because of X, Y, and Z. The reality is that God gives commands for our good and for our benefit. And then the enemy comes along and he wants to undo the very thing that God has said to us in the first place. Our position here is, what are we looking at? What are we paying attention to? What are we focusing on? Because that very thing, when Eve took the time to look, she saw that the tree was good for food. It's not that it didn't have fruit on it. It's just that the fruit wasn't good for her. And so that's where we need to focus. You know what? If you have a long line of people in your family who have addictions, it's probably best if you never pick up a glass of wine. Maybe it's best that you pay attention to the things that you're watching to on television or listening to on the radio or books that you might be reading. There's triggers and all of those kinds of things. But the point I want to make here is this. It's what you look at. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, she remembered. She's had this conversation with the enemy, and he planted a doubt, a seed in her mind, in her soul, that it would be just fine for her to partake of it. And she did. So we're going to go into that a little bit deeper, probably tomorrow. But today, I want to ask you a question. What are you focusing on? Because what you focus on is the very thing you're going to hit each and every time. The thing they tell you not to do when you're driving is to pay attention to what's directly in front of you. You look out. You pay attention to what's happening beyond what's directly in front of you, because you will hit what you're focused on every time, whether it's good or whether it's bad. So if you need to shift your focus, shift your focus. Let God be God. Pay attention to what he said and obey the things he said. Have a great day. God's with you. He loves you. He knows you. He's calling you by name, and he's got a purpose for your life.